mining has contributed to the economies of many countries across the world, but it has also contributed to environmental degradation, including health concerns, particularly in many mining communities across Africa, including Ghana. Now, we want to understand the hidden health costs associated with mining in today's episode. And with me to do that is Professor Emmanuel Sunkari. Prof, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doc.
So, if you have not subscribed to the channel, kindly do so on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on TikTok, so that we'll continue to bring you more insightful conversations, such as the one we are going to have today. So, Prof, can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us where you are, what you do, and your interest generally within the mining space?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Francis. First of all, I would like to thank you for this call. It's a step in the right direction. We need to let our people know some of these important things. And I would also like to thank your cherished viewers who have been joining this show. In fact, it's a very educational show and it's very insightful. So straight to the question, my name is Dr. Emmanuel Sunkari. So I'm currently an associate professor of mining engineering at Sir Padampat Singhania University in India. Previously, I was in Ghana as a lecturer at the University of Mines and Technology, and I moved to India quite recently. And I have a background in geological engineering. I schooled in Turkey for my master's in geology, then also my PhD in geological engineering, and then I found myself as a mining engineering professor. So my interest actually intersects geology, mining, and environment. So I try to look at where deposits are formed, how they formed, and then also how to unearth these mineral deposits. Then I also look at the environmental implications as you are extracting the deposits. What implications do they leave on the environment, to the people, to the communities? These are the things I do. So in brief.
That's quite impressive. And so, have you worked with some companies or corporations in Ghana or elsewhere to be able to, do all the things that you talked about?
Thank you so much. So I have done a lot of consultancy works for a lot of mining companies, especially in Ghana. I've worked with Precious Mining Ghana Limited. I did some consultancy works with them and also some secondment funded by the Ghana Chamber of Mines. I also did some consultancy services for Castle Minerals Limited. Maybe you may hear that there is a graphite deposit in the Upper West region of Ghana. I am one of the main consultants that is in charge of that project in WA. And I've also done some works with Azuma Resources and other mining companies and environmentally inclined companies. I've done some consultancy services for them. But predominantly, I am into academia. So I teach predominantly in the university space.
What drew your interest to look at issues of mining, geology, or geological mining, and then, environmental health associated with mining?
Great. Thank you so much. So I have lived, I have worked, I have studied in cities that are mining related. So these cities are where they are mining iron, zinc, gold, and all that. And having looked at how the people are suffering, you see, the companies mine, they get the benefit, but the communities are left. And they are suffering the consequences after the mining. So that actually touched me so well, especially when I was in Turkey. I studied in a city called Niğde, and in this city, they mine iron and zinc. Even my PhD was on iron and zinc deposits. And I saw that during the exploration phase, the mining phase, there were some elements that were left into the environment. For example, arsenic. And this arsenic had its way into even the groundwater. And as the people were drinking the groundwater, they began to show certain illnesses or some diseases. And that really touched me a lot. So it changed my focus more on, searching for the deposit, but also now looking at the health implications. So I then took up what we call a postdoctoral research fellowship in medical geology at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. And that exposed me to most of these things. So looking at the health implications of earth materials on human beings. It could be the soil, it could be the water, it could be the minerals. And that is why my research trusts are now lying in these particular areas.
Yeah. I wanted to stay on this particular area that you've just mentioned. But before that, let me announce that this is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokun. Our guest is Dr. Emmanuel Sunkari. He's an associate professor of mining engineering. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and on Facebook. Many of us, when we talk about mining, we often focus on the economic benefits of mining. But you and I know that we've been mining gold, for instance, for several centuries, but there's nothing really to show for in terms of economic developments. And on top of that, there's pervasive degradation of the environment, such as soil contaminations, air and water pollution, among others, in many mining communities. And you have just talked about that. You've talked about your lived experience, and apart from studying about these associated environmental and health costs, you have also lived it. You have worked in the field as well. So I want you to focus narrowly on the health implications of mining. If you can elaborate more on that, that will be helpful.
Thank you so much. I think there is a dichotomy in that particular aspect. Looking at the hidden health costs is in two folds. Now, the first is about the individual. There are health costs related to the individual, and there are also health costs that are related to the community health systems. So why do I say this? The individuals that are doing the mining, they are mostly exposed to certain diseases. Sometimes they become chronic diseases, and then also heavy metal poisoning or pollution. I mentioned arsenic as one of the metals. It's potentially toxic. And even mercury, if you look at where we are doing artisanal small-scale mining, especially the illegal aspect of it, you see that people are using mercury to actually, so catch the gold. And so when they do that and the residue is left, it goes into our water, it goes into our human body, and then it can cause a lot of health hazards. So the human being is exposed to diseases, is exposed to injuries. The human being can even get some stress-related issues. Those working in the mining sector, they can get some stress, they get fatigue, occupational injuries. We may hear that sometimes a truck has hit somebody during the mining. And this is also one of the hidden health costs. How is the person going to come back to his aesthetic state before that issue happened? So that is just for the individual. Now, the communities themselves, especially the community health systems, we put a lot of burden on them. Because now that we have a lot of people suffering from most of these issues, the limited health systems we have, they become choked up. We begin to encounter a lot of issues. We don't have the experts or the expertise in treating some of these illnesses. And when that happens, in fact, the system becomes a system that is not so much in order. So that is why I said it is in dichotomy, the individual and also the community health systems, they all get that burden.
Let's stay with mercury. Mercury, dust, cyanide. I don't know if the small-scale miners use cyanide too, but mostly they use mercury, right? So these substances, these chemicals, you mentioned that they may end up in our water bodies, and of course, that definitely have health implications.
Yeah.
Now, are these substances or chemicals that find their way into our water bodies, do they have long-term implications or short-term implications, or both? How is it like?
Okay. So I can say it is both the implications of these, let's say, potentially toxic elements and also the health hazards. They are actually both long-term and short-term. For example, accidents, an acute exposure may cause immediate harm. You feel a harm, you feel injury. But we can also have chronic diseases, especially exposure to dust continuously. It can lead to maybe respiratory issues, and these can become chronic. And within the entire lifespan of the individual, the person will be suffering from these respiratory issues. So that is why I said they can be both long term and also short term. Short term are the accidents that people encounter when they are mining. And then the long term ones are the illnesses or sicknesses they go through because of continuous exposure. For example, you made mention of cyanide and mercury. In fact, even the cyanide is being used. When you go to
Okay.
a place like Dakurpe in the Savannah region, I've been there before. We went to take some soil samples, trying to study this kind of thing, the impact of artisanal small-scale mining on soil quality. In fact, we realized that the soil was very dark because there was a part where they were using cyanide to
Yeah.
amalgamate the gold.
Mm.
And because of that, it was leaving its footprint on the soil. And when it rains, the water takes these chemicals, sips them down into the ground, it gets into the aquifers, and then we are drinking back the water that is contaminated with the cyanide. And the same thing with mercury. So the effects are both short and long term in
Yeah, but
nature.
many people think that once they don't live in mining communities, they should not be worried about these things. So if I'm living in my hometown of Nandom and
Mm,
mining is done in, let's say, you mentioned Dakrupe, right, in the Savannah
mhm,
region,
mhm,
or
mhm,
Takwa, or
mhm.
or Prestia, or Bogoso, or Obuasi. If I'm not living in any of these areas, should I be worried?
Yes, I think you should be worried. Why? Because there can be what we call cross contamination.
Mm.
If you share a border with any of these communities, in fact, most of these contaminants are washed or carried away by surface runoff. And when that happens, it can travel a long distance and get to even where you are staying and goes down into your aquifers. Apart from that, now people farm in these areas that they are mining, for example,
Yeah.
for vegetables and all that. And then you go to the market to buy. You buy these vegetables that have bioaccumulated these potentially toxic elements. Now you cook and you eat. It is going back into your system. So that is why it is a shared responsibility. We all have to get worried about this because it is something that can get into your system even unknowingly. So even though you are not living in a mining community, you should be worried about the unregulated use of some of these chemicals in mining.
Yeah, others have said that even if you are living outside of Ghana, or so the discussion is not limited to Ghana.
Mm,
It's about
global.
where mining. Yeah, it's globally, right?
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
wherever mining is. I mean, wherever they do mining.
mm,
But we sometimes, particularly we Africans, we tend to patronize a lot of African products, including, I mean,
mm.
even if you're not living in anywhere in Africa, if you're not living in Ghana, but you want to still eat your kenke, still want to eat your momoni, your fish. Momoni is a type of fish, right? You still want to eat, uh, your fish from Ghana and all of that, your dry fish and all. And some of these fishes may be contaminated in one way or the other.
Mm.
So it means that you can, even if you're not living in Ghana and you are living abroad, you can still be impacted negatively if you
Yeah.
patronize these goods from Ghana, isn't it?
Yes, that is what I just said. So, for
Mm,
example, you go to the market, you can buy those things like the fish, the seafood, and other things. that are coming from these areas. Because of the cross-contamination, you don't know, but these things have bioaccumulated the potentially toxic elements.
Yeah.
It can even be from another country. Okay, let's say I'm in India now. I go and buy something maybe coming from Ghana or another country where the mining is intense and it was unregulated and farming was done there, and I bought, let's say, farm produce or something that has now become finished, and then I want to use it to cook or to eat. What happens is that it can get into my system. And once it gets into my system, it can disrupt my system. And I think maybe later we can get to that stage. There are three things it will do to your system. So some of these contaminants are carcinogenic, some are also teratogenic, others are mutagenic.
Yeah. Can you explain that to our audience? These
All
are
right.
technical terms that many people may not understand. So just explain
Yes.
that to us.
All right. So when we say carcinogenic, some of these potentially toxic elements are cancer causing. So they can cause cancer of the skin, cancer of the blood, cancer of the bones, or whatever. A typical example is arsenic and mercury. Arsenic is carcinogenic. Mercury is carcinogenic. Now, others are also teratogenic, meaning they can cause what we call birth defects. A woman gives birth to a child. The child, unfortunately, is not well developed in terms of his body makeup because of the metal-induced effects. The woman may have eaten something that is coming from these potentially toxic elements, or maybe taking water that is contaminated with regard to these potentially toxic elements in a mining environment. And then the woman gives birth, the child is not able to develop very well. And then we call that teratogenesis. Then we also say they can also be mutagenic. What that means is it can play with your DNA, change your DNA. And that is what I have been saying, that sometimes you can see a woman, give birth to a child. And maybe this woman is in such an environment where mining is intense and unregulated. Now, as she has taken in the contaminants, which have played and changed her DNA, she picks seed with her husband. What happens is that she gives birth to a child. The child's DNA is not as that of the father. They do paternity tests, and then they begin to blame the woman that she has gone outside.
Yeah.
You see? So this is an environmental issue as well. So we need to look at that. Sometimes when we see a misfit with the paternity test, we need to look at the environmental aspect also.
Yeah, that's quite revealing. I'm sure many of our audience will want you to explain that further, particularly these days when many people are accusing women of, they go to do paternity tests and then they have issues of some of the children or all the children. It may not be the woman's fault, isn't it? So
that is right.
Yeah, and many people are not aware. So you just accuse the woman falsely, and that may not be the case.
Yes.
Now, can you provide us with evidence of some of the birth defects that, so let's use Ghana as an example. Are there cases where there are birth defects in some of the mining communities? Are there any studies to confirm what you've just said?
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, there are a lot of research that has been conducted on this subject, mainly published, and then also some are even reports that NGOs have undertaken research and came out with those reports. And it's quite common in these mining communities where they are doing artisanal small-scale mining, ASM. You will see that sometimes the legs of children are not so well developed. The child cannot even walk well. The eye has a problem. The ear has a problem. And all these are what we call metal-induced effects. So as they are taking in these contaminants like the arsenic or the mercury, they begin to play with their system. And then when the woman gives birth to the child is not able to develop well. In fact, I went to the Savannah region and visited about 3 communities where they are doing this ASM. One is Tinga, one is Banda and Kwanta, then the other is Dakurpe. We saw evidence of this. And we had to even go to the health center. We took records, we took data, we took pictures of people that are suffering from cancer of the skin. You will see the skin like a sore. that is on it. And it is all because of the artisanal small-scale mining activities they are doing.
Yeah.
Because they are being exposed. When they are taking the mercury, they don't even use gloves. They just
Mm-hmm.
put their hands into the mercury and they are mixing with what they want, and then they want to get the gold. And even the mercury, some are inhaling it. There was one of the bosses who was standing by his people, the ones working for him. He said, even he who was not working, there was this induced effect on his brain. He went to Kolebu to do tests, and they saw a lot of mercury around his brain. Simply by watching the people use the mercury, there was that induced effect on him. So how more the people who are using the mercury?
Yeah.
It means that for them, there is high level of mercury in their system. Even their urinary. I mean, when you check their urine, there are research works that have proven that even the urine of mine workers contain some of these potentially toxic elements. When you take their fecal
Yeah.
matter also, the same.
Yeah. And most of these miners do not use PPEs. They don't use any protection gears. That's quite
Yes.
worrying.
So that is why we are giving a clarion call to them. Look, you have to think about your own life. Okay. As you are interested in your economic benefit, also be interested in the health aspect of your life. You know, some people are connected to you. You are the source of livelihood to some people. And if you are no more today, the livelihood may be cut off.
Yeah.
So please let us take it as something that will help all of us. And we use the appropriate PPEs, and then we see how it can unfold for us.
Yes. This is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokun. Our guest is Dr. Emmanuel Sunkari. He's an associate professor of mining engineering. If you are enjoying our conversation, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, or on Facebook, and we'll continue to bring you such insightful conversations. Doc, I want you to establish the relationship between what we are discussing, the health, and then the green transition. Is there any relationship between health and green transition?
All right. Thank you so much. So, you know, when we talk about the green transition, we are talking about a shift towards an environment that is maybe dominated by low carbon emissions, an environment that is, resource efficient, so that it can mitigate climate change and its impacts. So now, if you want to do such a thing, the transition relies on a lot of minerals. For example, the critical minerals, you may have heard of lithium, graphite, tantalum. These are all minerals that we find in a lot of countries. And these minerals are used in the manufacture of carbons and also these EV vehicles, some parts of them and all that, to reduce the carbon emissions. Now, if we are able to establish that particular relationship and we know that this is where we have these particular minerals and we are able to unearth them and use them appropriately, then it means that we are going to lower the health burden, the health costs that are related to their extraction. In fact, we will not even be paying much attention to the ones that are destructive. We will pay more attention to the ones that will be environmentally friendly. Like I made mention, the critical minerals we have mentioned. So health actually must be central to ensure that the transition is not only environmentally sound, but it should also be what? Socially just. As you are mining, there should also be the health aspect, the social aspect. It should be improving the health status of the people, but not giving them a lot of burden. So this transition has a lot to do with mining and also to do with the health.
So I want us, even though our conversation is, global, it cuts across everywhere in the world, and mining affects people everywhere. It doesn't matter whether small-scale mining or large-scale mining. It doesn't matter whether it's in Australia or Canada or the US or Ghana or Tanzania or South Africa. Mining activities are the same everywhere, and they affect people everywhere. But I want us to use Ghana as a case study or as an example to let our audience know, are the current mining regulations or policies enough to address health concerns in Ghana?
All right. Thank you so much. So to a larger extent, I can say no in most cases. All right. So there are a lot of policies. Policies are in existence. We are not in want of policies, but most of these policies only exist on paper. The execution, implementation is a problem. All right. So health considerations mostly are weakly integrated or intertwined with the policies. The policies are interested in, the benefits thereof. But with respect to the health implications, most of these policies lack that intertwining. And enforcement is also inconsistent, especially at the local level. You go to most of the communities in Ghana, you use Ghana as a case study. Go to the Wassa enclave, Wassa Ekropong area. You would just see that people are doing this ASM by the roadside. And it's like a community thing. Everybody is there doing it. And I wonder whether the regulators do not see this as a problem, or they have given them the license to do that. You see that the water becomes polluted. When you walk along that particular stretch, you see the water looks like you have poured, Milo into it. Because of the contamination. I have a PhD student who took some samples around most of these regions that we are doing mining. And look, if you see the total dissolved salt levels of most of these waters is outrageous, very high, meaning it contains a lot of dissolved solids. And when it gets into your system, it will cause a lot of havoc. Mercury levels are high, arsenic levels are high. So it is a problem. The policies are there, but the implementation, we have regulators. The EPA is there. But sometimes we may not know what is happening in some of the areas. You see that it is done in impunity, but nothing is done to the perpetrators. So it is not like we are in want of policies, but the problem is that the policies do not have much to do with the health aspects. So we need to interwoven them with the health, so that as people are mining, they should also look at the health and the environment. Whatever that is happening to the environment, there should be punitive measures. And these punitive measures should actually be adhered to. The regulators should use them and actually serve as a deterrent to people who are also going to practice such. We can regularize it. In certain places, I mean, this ASM has become even legal, but through some rudimentary ways, they have put rules in place for you to operate it. Go to Zambia, even in Africa. They are also having artisanal small-scale mining, but it has become legal. You register it, and that is why the government of the day, I hear there is going to be some registration at the district levels. We'll have district mining centers, of which if you are going to practice ASM, you can get registered, and even you'll be given some training. I think it is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned, Wassa Ekropong. Yeah, I've done some work in that area, and I can attest to what you just said. Wassa Ekropong, Ayamfuri, those places. When you get there, everyone is basically involved in the artisanal small-scale mining activities. It's good. I have always advocated for artisanal small-scale mining. But like you said, we have to do it well. The current regime is not very friendly. There are bureaucratic bottlenecks involved in the registration process. And, we need to formalize it. So the term is formalization. So we need to formalize the artisanal small-scale mining sector, because it contributes largely to Ghana's economy. 1/3 of Ghana's gold, for instance, comes from the artisanal small-scale mining sector, which means that the sector has the potential to contribute to national development if managed well. But you mentioned policy gap. You said the implementation is always a problem. My own work has come to that conclusion, that the problem in Ghana and in most developing countries is not the lack of policies, but the inability or lack of capacity to implement the existing policies. For instance, there's no coordination between or among some of the government agencies or institutions. Example again, you mentioned the EPA. So we have
Yes.
EPA, we have the Minerals Commission, we have the Forestry Services Commission, etc.
Water
So instead of
resources.
these institutions working together, coordinating and working together, these institutions are mostly engaged in interagency competition and infighting. So this one says, oh, I am responsible for issues of the environment. So this money, for instance, should be given to me. The other one says, no, I am in charge of this particular regulation. I should be in charge of managing the resources, managing the money that the government has allocated to address issues of the environment. But they should coordinate, they should work together.
That's right.
You also mentioned Zambia as an example. I want us to stay around this particular area. Are there, apart from Zambia, are there other African countries that we can learn good lessons from, that Ghana, for instance, and other African countries can learn from in this space?
Yes, so like I mentioned, a critical example is Zambia. Then just within the Southern African bloc, even in South Africa, if you go there, you hear less of most of these issues, like these artisanal small-scale mining issues. The mining there is formalized, so they work in groups, and these small-scale mining groups, you can get a license to operate. Your operations are regulated by the government, and that will not have a lot of impact on the environment. So Zambia, South Africa, and especially most of the Southern African countries, they know how to do this best. I think they are examples for us to learn from, right, in this particular issue.
Yeah, so you talked about the health impacts of mining, particularly in developing countries. But I want you to provide to our audience the distinction between the global north and the global south. How different are our people?
Okay.
How different are countries of the global south from that of global north in terms of the health impact of mining? What are they doing right and we are doing wrong? How can we overcome that?
Okay. So when you look at the global south, like countries like Ghana, India, and the others, there are weaker regulations. We have weaker regulations. Informal mining is practiced almost everywhere, and there is limited healthcare services available in such countries. And this is what helps in amplifying the health risks related to the mining. So, but when you look at the global north, okay, if you look at the global north, they have stronger enforcement practices. Enforcement is stronger, regulation is stronger. Even though they have these, we are not saying they are completely eliminating the health risks, but they are being reduced. There is minimization of the health risks related to the mining. So we see that we can learn a lot from the global north because of the strong regulations they put, because of the proper healthcare systems that are put in place. So when somebody is doing mining and has a problem, there is a place where his health issue can be dealt with. But in Ghana, or in maybe most of the countries in the global south, we have poor healthcare delivery systems. So when somebody encounters a particular problem during the mining, where to treat him is even a problem. So that is the difference between the global south and the global north.
You earlier on talked about justice, issues of environmental justice, all of that. I want to find out from you the justice dimension. I want you to throw more light on the justice dimension. Who benefits and who bears the health costs of mining?
Okay.
I know you've elaborated quite a lot on the health impacts, particularly in mining communities. But I want us to specifically talk about the justice dimension, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So when you look at the mining process, there are a lot of people involved. Okay. We have investors who set up mining companies, mining in communities, and we have stakeholders also. Now, when you look at that particular hierarchy, you will see that the corporations, the companies are the ones that are having much of the economic benefits to the detriment of the mining communities. So I come to your community, I set up a mining company, I make money because I will get ore. Then I transport it or I take it somewhere, refine it, I make money. But what I may give you will be little. Maybe you have poor road network, no good electricity, and all that, health care system is poor. All that is left to the detriment of the mining communities. Now, the health hazards related to mining are also exposed to the community members during the mining. For example, dust that is being, released through the mining. Everyone around that vicinity may inhale it, and that can cause respiratory issues. So you can see that the economic benefits go more to the what? Corporations, to the investors, to the mining companies. But the health hazards largely are going to the communities where the mining is being practiced. So there is no justice in this system. You can see that it raises a lot of questions of environmental and social justice.
Yeah.
One is benefiting, the other is not. Meanwhile, the produce or the resource is actually in the one that is not benefiting. It's within his territory. So we should get to a level where there is a balance. You come to invest, you come to mine in my community, we should strike a balance. I benefit, you benefit. The environment should also benefit. We shouldn't forget about the environment. So the mining should not leave any negative footprints on the environment. Yeah. So that is the level we should get to. Then there will be a justice in the system.
Yeah. So simply there should be win-win outcomes.
Exactly.
Associated with mining. Yeah, that's simply what you are saying. If you are watching us, this is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokun. Our guest is Dr. Emmanuel Sunkari. He's an associate professor of mining engineering. If you have not subscribed to the channel, kindly do so. Go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on TikTok. So that we'll continue to bring you more insightful conversations. So what practical, based on all the things we've said on the show today, what practical steps can governments, communities, corporations or companies apply or employ to deal with health issues associated with mining?
Okay, so thank you so much. So I think on the side of government, we should say that governments must strengthen enforcement. For example, we have the regulatory authorities available. We made mention of EPA, Minerals Commission, and all that. These regulatory authorities should actually strengthen the enforcement of the policies that are on paper. They should be practiced. They shouldn't be things that are cosmetic. So it is more or less like we are doing cosmetic regulation. It is only on paper, but not in real practice. Now, the companies must also adopt best safety and environmental practices. Each company should begin to learn. We are evolving from the phase where they got into the system. So they should bring in environmentally friendly practices that will ensure the safety and the well-being of the workers in the company. So these are the things. And then to the communities also, they should be empowered with information. Communities should know what is happening. Sometimes you go to a community where mining is taking place, but the community members don't know what is happening. They come and then they are encroaching on the lands without the community members knowing this, because they have actually gotten permission from government, but the community engagement sometimes is relegated. So the community members may come at you and they are attacking you because they are not properly informed. So I think the community engagement is something we should look at, and also healthcare access. Community members should be giving that priority also. Once you are mining there, you should also provide them with healthcare, access. There should be hospitals or clinics available so that even when you have a casualty at your workplace, that can also even be dealt with. Then participation in governance. The community should be involved in the governance process, decision-making process. before you do your mining, you would have done what we call environmental impact assessment. There's another one we call SEER, all right? So that is also about an assessment which involves almost everyone, the community members, it involves the how do you call it, the government, the regulators, all those people should be involved. The community members should also be given a say. Now, I say that there are two things I, in my research, have proposed that we can always use. We have what we call community-oriented policing. We can practice community-oriented policing to deal with the menace of artisanal small-scale mining. What that means is that the community members should become the watchdogs for this particular illegal activity that is occurring in our communities. Empower them, use them, pay them, let them become watchdogs and give you information so the regulators can work with the communities. So that's what we call community-oriented policing. Then another aspect could be intelligence-led policing. With this intelligence-led policing, you can have some security agencies in place that are coordinating. Like you mentioned, there is no synergy. Most of the regulators are actually competing instead of them working tirelessly and having some kind of connectivity or linkage in sharing information. They are instead competing. So there should be that kind of synergy among the securities and then also the, how do we call it, the implementers or the regulators.
So you mentioned community-oriented policing. How different is that from the water guards that we have? And then you mentioned the police intelligence. So
intelligence-led policing.
Yes. How different is that also from the vigilante groups? You know, various governments have set up vigilante groups or Operation Vanguard, etc. So how different is your proposal from what we already have? Is it not duplication?
Okay, so that is an aspect of it. But let's ask ourselves, how are they recruited? Where are they coming from? You cannot recruit somebody from another place to come and protect my water body. When that happens, there will be injustice in the system and the community members will become agitated. If there is let's say, a natural resource within my community and you want to protect it, recruit people, natives from that community to do the protection. Empower them. They may give you some key information you don't know. But when you recruit aliens or strangers from another place to go and protect a resource somewhere, that is where we always have conflicts coming in between those people and the government. You may have heard of NAIMOS or, there is a government, group that they have set up, and they have been shooting them. They have been having issues with the community members. So we should recruit people from the communities themselves through the chiefs and the opinion leaders. Then that can actually help us in this particular enterprise. So it is not entirely different, but the recruitment process is actually the problem. Yeah. And we have to empower it with technology. If there is no technology, that is where the intelligence-led policing comes in. Using the securities, but you have to use also technology to actually be able to decipher the hotspots. You can use remote sensing. You can use drone technology to be able to know the hotspots of these activities. And then you can stop whatever activity that is happening. Before you even think about treating water bodies that are polluted because of mining, you need to be able to decipher the hotspots using intelligence-led policing.
Yes, you mentioned technology. I want us to focus on that angle, but from the viewpoint of safety in mining. So how can technology and policy innovation be employed in mining safety or in safety within the mining sector?
Okay, so I think it can also, largely be put on, for example, looking at the end chain of the mining, the processing. You go to blast, you drill, you drill, blast, you haul, then you come to process. So even during the processing, you have to use clean technologies. Because if you are not using clean technologies to do the processing, the people may be affected. Those who are even doing the processing may have some health hazards. You may have heard that people who are doing the processing, they are exposed to, mercury, they are exposed to a lot of potentially toxic elements, and in the end, they have some problems at home. They are suffering. They have made the money, but in the end, they are having some health challenges. So we have to use clean technologies in doing the processing of the ore, the processing of the minerals that we have hauled from our pits. Now, we have to also do what we call real-time air and water monitoring. As the process is ongoing, we should be able to monitor at real time. So that is why I said we can even use the drone technology. Drone technology can help us in some of these things and monitor the dust, that is being produced at certain places. Then we can actually, zone it and know the hotspots. We can also use what we call digital safety systems, all right, in, the operations of the mines. As a mining company is being operated, digital safety systems can be used. Then we can also have health-centered regulations. As I mentioned, you would see that most of our regulations are geared towards other peripheries. They don't have a lot of inclination to the health. That is why, I have a research, one of my master's students conducted it, integrating hydrogeological risk assessment into mine planning to protect groundwater quality and human health. So when we look at most of the mining activities, they don't look at the health effects of mining. All that is, required is getting the ore, getting the money, and then, yes, you can do reclamation, but there are other issues that are associated with what you have done, which you have neglected. So, for instance, before you do mining, you have to actually check the soil quality, the water quality. You have to check the recharge sources where water is coming into the system so that you can block all the passageways of contaminants.
Yeah.
If not, once the activity is being carried out and it is completed, there will still be conduits for the transfer of these potentially toxic elements or contaminants, and communities will be exposed. So we need to integrate hydrogeological risk assessment into mine planning activities across the globe. And that is something that will help us.
Yeah, that's great. That's very insightful. So you mentioned reclamation. In a recent study that I did with AK Mensa, we proposed a framework. I mean, the study is subaltern environmentalism. I mean, we use this framework to assess the government 5-point strategy of dealing with illegal mining in Ghana. And we propose concurrent reclamation as the way to deal with some of the problems associated with artisanal small-scale mining in Ghana. Concurrent reclamation is you are mining at the same time you are reclaiming the degraded lands, and that is the way forward to deal with some of the environmental problems associated with mining. And I think I will mention Newmont. Newmont is very good at this particular concurrent reclamation, and that's what they do, and it is really good. And if we are able to use this framework within the artisanal small-scale mining sector in Ghana and elsewhere, it will help deal with the challenges associated with artisanal small-scale mining. So, Doc, I want you to leave us with your final word. I mean, it's been an insightful conversation, and I've really enjoyed it so far. So I want you to give us your final word. What is your final word in terms of the hidden health costs associated with mining?
Okay, thank you so much. What I would say is that, in fact, we should all become environmental citizens, not spectators of the environment. The environment should be dear to our heart. Whatever we do, we should think about the repercussions. It will always come back to us. So the most urgent issue is chronic exposure. When looking at all the health things I've talked about, we have chronic exposure to toxic substances, the potentially toxic elements. And these silently undermine the health of workers. People don't know, but they are inducing these metals or elements into their system. And over time, we will have outbreak of diseases. People are paralyzed. People cannot even, do things they used to do to survive or to even help people that depend on them. So we all have to take it as a problem that affects all of us. As we mentioned, you may not be living in a mining company, a mining community, but the effects may get to you because you may buy food that is mined, that is, planted on a mined land. So food that is coming from a mined out land can have these potentially toxic elements, and you will take them into your system without knowing. So it is unto all of us. Let's take it so dear to our heart. I'm not saying mining is bad. Mining is good, but it must be regulated. The enforcers and the implementers of our policies must become watchdogs. They have to act. Their activities must not be cosmetic. When they are cosmetic, that is why we begin to have these hidden costs. The hidden costs will not come when implementers are working. So that is the last thing I can say.
Yeah, thank you so very much.
Yes.
Viewers, this is the Green Transition Show. We thank you for watching. We also thank our guest, Dr. Emmanuel Sunkari, for such an insightful conversation we had on the show, and such depth of knowledge. We thank him so much. We hope to have him again. If you have not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button on YouTube to encourage us to continue to bring you such insightful conversations. If you can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on TikTok. We are live on TikTok as well. You can follow us on TikTok, and we'll continue to bring you such conversations week in, week out. Thank you for watching us. We thank our guests once again for accepting the invitation to be on the show. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much. All right.
So we hope to see you again next time.
All right. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.